On the eve of the company's IPO, Luis took the stolen proposal and got into my Rolls-Royce ahead of me. "Vice President," he said calmly, "Boss Mu said I'm more suitable than you to negotiate this project. In terms of ability, I'm no worse than you." I didn't get angry, on the contrary, I laughed. Although inside the company I had appointed Laura Mu as the chairwoman, everyone knew that I was the real decision-maker behind the scenes. And as for Luis, just a fresh graduate with a pretty face, what real ability could he possibly have? Living off a woman, maybe. Half an hour later, my assistant rushed over in a panic. Only then did I learn that Luis had been in a car accident and died on the spot. But the very next second, Laura had already released a pre-written obituary across the entire internet, claiming that I was the one who had died. From then on, Luis would be the president of the Ning Group. A few days later, I showed up on time at the company's IPO ceremony. Just as I was about to cut the ribbon, a 5 or 6-year-old boy ran over and blocked me, shouting arrogantly, "My mom is the chairwoman. My dad is the president. Who the hell do you think you are?" When the argument reached a stalemate, my wife finally arrived late, ignoring the terrified, ghost-seeing expression on her face. I smiled and handed over Luis's death certificate. "Chairwoman Mu," I said lightly. "Luis won't be coming. As for his appointment notice, do you want me to burn it for him right now?" Chapter 1. The company's IPO ceremony was about to begin. Yet I was stopped at the entrance. It wasn't until a security guard's startled shout alerted people from the Mu Group that a senior executive hurried over. The instant he saw me, his pupils shrank violently, his face turning deathly pale, and the words slipped out of his mouth almost by reflex, "Be brother-in-law." I looked him up and down. This man was my wife's younger brother, my brother-in-law, Jonathan. Ever since I got married, everyone from my wife's family had been leeching off me. No matter whether they were aunts, uncles, or brothers-in-law, they were all shoved into the company without exception. Yet these people held their positions without doing any real work, drawing high salaries while contributing nothing. For the sake of the company's operations, I had occasionally mentioned to Laura that I wanted to reassign them to other, less important positions, but my wife had slapped me across the face in front of the entire company. "Kevin, you're just a vice president. The Mu family isn't yours to arrange." Thinking of this, I snapped back to the present. A chill seeped into my eyes, and my tone was no longer as calm as usual. "What? The company is going public, shouldn't I be here?" Hearing the familiar voice, my brother-in-law froze for a few seconds, then burst out laughing, drawing countless glances from the crowd inside. "That's not right. You're not my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law was already run over and killed. Get lost. Get lost. You damn fraud. Don't delay my little nephew's succession ceremony." Nephew. Succession ceremony. My heart skipped a beat. Laura and I didn't even have children. Where did this so-called nephew come from? With the IPO ceremony imminent and time pressing, I shot him a cold glance and walked straight toward the ribbon-cutting stage. Just as I picked up the scissors, a little boy of 5 or 6 suddenly jumped out, glaring at me with hostility and shouting, "Put the scissors down. My dad is the company's president. My mom is the chairwoman. Who do you think you are, that you're worthy of cutting the ribbon?" When I finally got a clear look at the boy's face, I froze. He looked exactly like Luis, like he had been carved from the same mold. I clenched my fists so hard they trembled, my temples pounding. Until just moments ago, I had believed Luis's death was an accident, but now, everything became crystal clear. So Laura had wanted me dead all along. She had deliberately staged that car accident, waiting for me to die so she could hand over everything I had fought so hard for to Luis, letting the three of them live happily ever after as a family. What she hadn't expected was that Luis, eager to steal the credit, had ended up taking the hit for me instead. I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. That idiot Laura Mu probably still believed I was the one who died. I took out my phone. After a few calls, the Mu Group's most important ongoing partnerships were terminated. Everyone stared at me as if they had seen a ghost. The scene descended into chaos. My brother-in-law's face turned green with rage as he charged toward me like a madman. "I'll count to 3, you damn fraud. Get out right now. Otherwise I'm calling the police." I didn't even spare him a glance. Before the third count ended, Jonathan was knocked to the ground by a few swift punches from my personal bodyguards. I cleared my throat and picked up the microphone. "The younger generation at home lacks discipline. Sorry to make a spectacle of ourselves." With that, I picked up the scissors on the stage and completed the ribbon cutting in front of everyone. My movements were smooth and decisive, leaving no room for interference. A deathly silence fell over the venue. Then waves of shocked murmurs erupted. "Didn't Vice President Ning die in a car accident?" Chairwoman Mu said it herself. "Then who is this? He looks exactly like Vice President Ning. Could he be a fraud hired by a rival company?" Luis's illegitimate son burst into loud sobs, while several Mu family executives looked both shocked and furious. Jonathan struggled to his feet, clutching his swollen cheek, pointing at me viciously. "You damn fraud. Just wait until Luis and my sister get here. You're dead for sure. As soon as he finished speaking, Jonathan pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Not long after, my wife's voice came through the line. Chapter 2. When my wife learned that someone was impersonating me and causing trouble at the IPO ceremony, she immediately had Jonathan put the call on speaker to stabilize the situation and decisively clarified. As Kevin's wife, I can once again confirm that he has already died in a car accident. If anyone is pretending to be him to swindle others, please do not believe a single word. Furthermore, today's IPO ceremony of the Moo Group is also my son Tom's succession ceremony. You all know this already. He is the son of Luis and me. Kevin was nothing more than a dispensable live-in son-in-law of the Moo family. From today onward, Tom will be the next. Laura, do you really think I'm dead? I'll give you 3 chances. Crawl over here and apologize to me immediately. Before she could finish speaking, I had already lost all patience and cut her off. I swept my cold gaze across the entire venue. So everyone in the Moo Group knew about that illegitimate child. Everyone except me. Fine. I had personally built the Moo Group up from a tiny workshop into a publicly listed company. Every single deal had been secured through my connections. Yet in Laura's mouth, I had become nothing more than a dispensable live-in son-in-law. Fine, Laura Moo. Since you're courting death, then the Moo Group doesn't need to exist anymore. I lowered my head and sent out a text message. A few minutes later, all of the Moo Group suppliers terminated their cooperation as well. Some employees at the scene had already noticed something was wrong. Their gazes shifted toward me again and again. Just as one of them tried to report it to Jonathan, he was shoved back. The Moo Group is going public right now. And you're saying our partners canceled their contracts? Are you crazy? Get lost. After hearing my voice, there was a clear pause of several seconds on the other end of the call. Then came an extremely shrill, piercing voice. Sir, I know you're a fraud hired by a rival company, but no matter how well you act, you can't fool me. I'm Kevin's wife. How could I not know whether he's dead or alive? Laura spoke with absolute certainty, so much so that I almost laughed from anger. That employee finally couldn't take it anymore and shouted into the phone about what he had just discovered. The scene instantly fell back into panic and chaos. Laura began cursing loudly, and the more she heard, the more convinced she became that I was a fraud sent by a rival company to disrupt morale. It's impossible for the suppliers to cancel their contracts. If anything goes wrong, I'll compensate all of your losses. I let out a cold laugh. The company had just gone public. Almost everyone present held original shares. If the company went bankrupt right after listing, the losses wouldn't be a matter of a few thousand or tens of thousands per person. It would be millions, even tens of millions. The smile in my eyes deepened. At that moment, my personal assistant suddenly took out his phone and handed me a live stream feed. It was my office. So after my death, all of my belongings had been cleared out. Even the office decor had been changed into Luis's preferred style. On screen, several of my personal collectibles were tossed casually into a corner. Laura's voice suddenly appeared. The company is about to go public. These items, feel free to bid on them. I looked closely. Among them was a landscape oil painting. 10 years ago, Laura had casually mentioned that she liked oil paintings. I had eagerly gone off to study painting for an entire year and then presented it to her with both hands. There was also a pair of sapphire earrings. 5 years ago, when the company had finally stabilized, I had flown to Paris and spent $30 million to win them at auction. And now, the landscape painting was snapped up by an online viewer for $10, while the sapphire earrings sold for less than $30. Laura didn't even blink, as if she were casually disposing of worthless junk. I felt as though my heart had been viciously carved out. Laura, you have 2 chances left. The very next second, my pupils shrank violently, because I saw the jade pendant my grandfather had left me. Laura casually picked it up, her eyes filled with unfamiliarity, her tone indifferent and distant. This seems like some kind of old jade. I don't remember what it was for. Go ahead. Everyone, just bid. I immediately placed a bid of $200,000. Before this, most people in the live stream had been holding back. After all, no one believed cheap goods could be valuable. But now it was different. Chasing highs and killing lows, within just over 10 minutes, the price skyrocketed to $2 million. Jonathan seemed to notice my tension. Following my line of sight, he broke into a malicious grin. Oh, so you like this piece of jade? Then I'd better tell my sister. 5 minutes later, the price climbed to $30 million. I clenched my teeth and chose to call a sky-high bid. Just when I thought I could finally get my grandfather's jade pendant back, Laura received a message. On camera, she let out a light laugh, then raised her hand and smashed the pendant to pieces. Congratulations to the gentleman who chose to call a sky-high bid. Author's note, to call a sky-high bid means being willing to pay any price to secure the auction item. Chapter 3. My whole body jolted as a surge of adrenaline shot through me. That was the only keepsake my grandfather had ever left me, and judging from Laura's expression at the very end, she had clearly remembered it. Seeing that she had achieved her goal, Jonathan deliberately mocked me. You're one hell of a dedicated fraud, aren't you? Just to pretend to be that Ning guy. You were even willing to bleed money and to call a sky-high bid. I couldn't be bothered to respond to him. In my heart, I muttered coldly. Laura, you have one last chance left. The live stream audience kept growing larger and larger, taking advantage of the Moo Group's IPO buzz. The tangled triangular relationship between Laura, Luis, and me was quickly dug up and dissected, becoming hot gossip among netizens. So it turns out Chairwoman Moo and Luis are true love, that Kevin was just a useless deadweight. A grown man who lives off a woman and can't even have kids. Good thing he got run over and died. Half an hour later, the live stream suddenly cut to a scene inside a high-end VIP hospital ward where my parents were staying. My heart tightened instantly. What was Laura planning to do now? On camera, my parents looked noticeably older, crying so hard they were almost incoherent. Laura sighed and said bluntly, "Mom, Dad, since Kevin is already dead, our marriage is automatically dissolved. Next, I'll be marrying Luis. I'll leave you a small sum of money, but according to the law, a daughter-in-law has no obligation to support her parents-in-law. If you want to continue staying in this VIP ward, you'll have to figure it out yourselves." My mother lifted her head in disbelief, her voice choking with sobs. "Laura, the Moo Group exists today only because my son worked himself to the bone for it. Now that he's dead, how can you treat us like this?" Laura immediately became agitated. "Mom, that's incredibly unfair of you to say. Kevin was lazy and useless. If it weren't for me and my brother holding the company together, do you think you'd still be living in such a nice hospital ward? I've spent all these years serving your Ning family like a slave, working myself to the bone without complaint. How can you twist the truth like this?" After finishing in one breath, Laura's tears came instantly. She cried bitterly into the camera, acting as if she were the real victim. On the hospital bed, my mother was so angry she kept pounding her chest, while my father cursed Laura for being shameless. But with Laura's flawless acting, combined with what was probably a hired wave of online trolls, the live stream chat instantly exploded with abuse. Chairwoman Moo is so pitiful, making money for the Ning family by day and still having to endure these two old people at night. As a woman, I totally empathize with Chairwoman Moo. Can this whole family just go die? Exactly. Chairwoman Moo is being completely upfront. She's even leaving them money. Their son is already dead. What more do they want? Moments later, Laura waved her hand. Several bodyguards behind her immediately stepped forward, dragged my parents off the hospital bed, and forcibly kicked them out of the high-end VIP ward. I couldn't watch anymore. I clenched my fists so hard that veins bulged on my forehead. In that instant, the very last trace of affection I had for Laura completely vanished. "Laura, your final chance is gone." I decisively called the investors. "This is Kevin. The Moo Group's IPO plan is to be halted immediately, including all Moo family businesses. The Moo family's dog, the Ning family, don't want it anymore." After hearing my voice, the other party asked nothing. They hung up and carried it out at once. Then, with another call, I contacted the bank and immediately reclaimed all properties registered under Laura's name, and froze all of her bank cards. Chapter 4. After finishing all of this, I swept a cold gaze over several core members of the Moo Group's business team. None of them were from the Moo family. They were all people I had personally transferred over back then to support the Moo Group's development. The Moo family idiots don't recognize me. What about you? Don't tell me you don't recognize me either. As soon as the words fell, those key executives hesitated no longer. They immediately stepped forward and surrounded me, their throats bobbing as if they had endured immense grievance, their voices trembling. "President Ning, we never imagined you were still alive. Just give the word and we'll leave the Moo family immediately. We truly don't want to stay in this place for even one more second." I nodded. The tightly furrowed lines between my brows finally eased a little. At this moment, Jonathan finally sensed that something was wrong, because just minutes earlier, they had discovered that their bank cards, and even the company's accounts, had all been frozen by the bank. What's going on? An aunt from the Moo family, a vice president in name only, stared at me and cursed loudly. "It's you. It has to be you. You damn fraud. Stirring things up behind the scenes. My Moo family is worth hundreds of billions now. You dare sabotage us from the shadows. Just wait until Laura gets here and deals with you." Jonathan lifted his head, a flicker of shock flashing through his eyes. But only moments later, his rage reached its peak. Ignoring the people behind him trying to stop him, he strode straight up to me and threw a punch at my chest, even scraping and damaging my cufflink. If it weren't for the quick reflexes of the veteran employee Sam beside me, who rushed to support me, I might have fallen to the ground. "Jonathan, what right do you have to hit someone?" Sam shouted angrily. Jonathan glared at him and sneered. "Sam, you don't seriously believe he's Kevin, do you? You're an employee of the Moo family now. Get your ass over here." Sam spat at him without hesitation. "Pa, from this moment on, I'm not anymore." But I hadn't regained my balance yet. As I tilted to the side, my arm accidentally knocked over a vase on the ceremonial stage. The crisp shattering sound immediately drew Jonathan's attention. His expression changed drastically. "That's an antique worth several million. You'll have to pay for it." Sam panicked as well, together with a few other employees. He rushed forward, and they got into a scuffle with Jonathan. After considerable effort, they were finally pulled apart. Jonathan wiped the blood from his nose and, in a fury, called the police on the spot. "Just you wait. When my sister and the police get here, we'll see how you clean this up." I looked down, heart aching as I gently touched the cufflink he had damaged, then nodded. Yes, the police really should be called. Just then, a Rolls-Royce pulled up at the entrance. After receiving the news, Laura hurried over, clicking across the floor in high heels. She swayed her way into the venue. The instant she ran into me, her entire body froze. Her face alternated between green and white, as if she had seen a ghost. "Why you are." I smiled and walked toward her, pulling a death certificate from my jacket and handing it to her. "Chairwoman Moo, Luis probably won't be coming. Shall I burn his appointment notice for him right now?" Chapter 5. It was hard to describe the expression on Laura's face at that moment with a single word. Her features twisted violently. After the initial shock came fear and sheer panic. She felt as if all the blood in her body had frozen, the muscles in her face twitching uncontrollably. Trembling, Laura took the death certificate I handed her. Her palms were slick with cold sweat when she opened it and saw Luis's name with her own eyes. Her legs went weak, and she nearly collapsed onto the ground. "Mommy." Tom threw himself into Laura's arms at once, then shot me a glare and tilted his head to complain. "Mommy, this bad guy just cut the ribbon with the scissors. Go hit him." It was clearly agreed that Tom would cut it. "Mommy, when is Daddy coming?" Jonathan hurried forward to help Laura up and couldn't help asking. "Sis, what's wrong with you? Where's my brother-in-law Luis?" Laura shakily stood up, her face deathly pale, but when the words reached her lips, she didn't dare say outright that Luis was already dead. After all, this was still the IPO ceremony. If people found out now, it would definitely trigger a stock price crash. She forcefully suppressed her emotions, pulled Tom into her arms, and deliberately changed the subject. "Didn't you say something happened to the company? What exactly went wrong?" Only after Laura's reminder did Jonathan slap his forehead. Gritting his teeth, he glared at me and explained everything that had just happened. By the time Jonathan finished speaking, Laura's heart sank completely. She stole a glance at me, already more or less certain that all of this was my doing behind the scenes. But in front of the Moo family and her own employees, Laura knew she absolutely could not collapse right now. Even if it was an act, she had to keep acting. She nearly bit her lip until it bled, then steeled herself and took out her phone, preparing to humble herself and beg those partners and investors. After all, the company had just gone public. If it went bankrupt at this moment, Laura couldn't help shivering. Yet after dialing more than a dozen calls, she discovered that she had been blocked by every single one of them. "Why you?" Laura looked at me in fear, her lips trembling uncontrollably. Jonathan stepped forward, glanced at her, then at me, and asked curiously, "Sis, why are you staring at this dead fraud?" "Don't be afraid. I've already called the police. Once they arrive, they'll arrest him." Unexpectedly, Laura swung her hand and slapped Jonathan hard across the face without hesitation. "What dead fraud? He's your brother-in-law." Jonathan was completely stunned, staring at her in a daze. Only then did Laura realize what she had said. A cold sweat instantly broke out over her body. "No, wait, you already called the police." Suddenly, the sound of police sirens rang out from outside the entrance. "The police are here." Chapter 6. Before my foolish brother-in-law Jonathan could even figure out what was going on, I had already proactively presented my ID to the police, and casually explained that Luis had taken my car without permission, which was why the car accident happened. Laura's face turned even paler than a corpse. After listening to my account, the police nodded and stated that the accident indeed contained many suspicious points and was already under reinvestigation. However, one thing was now certain: the deceased was indeed Luis. That settled it. The entire venue erupted into an uproar. Upon hearing that his father was dead, Tom immediately broke down in hysterical sobs. He struggled out of Laura's arms, turned around, and viciously cursed her as a cruel woman. Seeing the chaotic scene before him, Jonathan was so furious that he nearly ground his molars to dust. He circled around me several times, re-examining me from head to toe, his tone dripping with venom. "Kevin, I really didn't expect it. It really is you. You're actually still alive." Only when he noticed the shattered vase on the floor did he finally remember why he had called the police in the first place. As if he had seized hold of my weakness, Jonathan grabbed my sleeve and said loudly to the officers, "Officer, no matter who he is, he damaged our antique vase. We demand full compensation at the original price." Several Mu family relatives immediately joined in, shouting at the top of their lungs. That's right, it's worth several million. It'd be best if you went to jail for it. I cast them a cold glance and let out a disdainful snort. Clueless idiots. Apparently enraged that I dared to humiliate them to their faces, the Mu family members shouted even louder, their voices nearly cracking. I frowned, rubbed my ear, and said calmly, "Officer, if it can be proven that the vase is truly an antique, I, Kevin, will compensate it no matter the price." But I raised the cufflink that Jonathan had damaged earlier and held it up in front of him. "Jonathan, you broke this during the fight just now. You'll need to compensate me at market value as well." Jonathan glanced at the tiny object in my hand and burst into loud laughter. "This thing? No problem. I'll buy you a bunch online later." "Kevin Ning, I really didn't expect you to be this poor now." The police officer glanced at me, then waved over an antique appraisal expert who had accompanied them. Moments later, the expert put down the broken porcelain shards and magnifying glass, stood up slowly, and said to the police, "Officer, this is not an antique. It's a mass-produced craft item, worth only a few hundred at most." "What?" Jonathan was stunned, his eyes nearly popping out. He lunged forward and grabbed the expert by the collar. "Look again. This is a Mu family heirloom. How could it be a cheap craft item?" Several officers immediately rushed forward and restrained the enraged Jonathan. The appraisal expert was clearly irritated as well. He straightened his collar and sneered. "A family heirloom? I've been in this business for over 10 years, and this is the first time I've seen someone treat a street stall craft item as a family heirloom. Absolutely ridiculous. And you wanted to extort this gentleman for several million, in your dreams." Jonathan was shut down so hard his face turned red and his neck stiffened. Suddenly, as if he realized something, he sharply turned his head toward several Mu family relatives. The aunt who held a nominal vice president title shuddered in fear, her gaze darting away guiltily. "So it was you, Susan, it was you who stole the family heirloom. Grandpa passed that down to me." If not for the police restraining him on the spot, he would have lunged forward and torn that Mu family aunt apart. Standing to the side, even I hadn't expected that before I said anything, the Mu family would already descend into internal chaos. Laura was trembling with rage as well, pointing at her relatives and cursing them for being shameless. Once they had finished tearing into each other, I calmly stepped forward and raised the cufflink in front of Jonathan again. "Jonathan, don't forget to compensate me for my cufflink." Jonathan, driven nearly insane by his relatives, shot me an impatient look and waved his hand dismissively. "Get lost. Get lost. Go ask my secretary for a few $100. Stop being an eyesore." I lowered my head and smiled softly. When I looked up again, my gaze was icy to the bone. "A dignified Mu family young master, and this is how little you've seen of the world. This is the end of the Dark Knight. Only 3 pieces exist worldwide. Price, 50 million. Chapter 7. Jonathan froze on the spot. Then he suddenly burst into loud laughter. "Kevin, you really are a damn fraud. A cufflink worth 50 million. Do you seriously think I'm some clueless idiot who's never seen the world?" In front of everyone, Jonathan laughed without any regard for his image, until his secretary, trembling all over, handed him the phone with what she had found. Jonathan's smile instantly stiffened on his face, because on an authoritative website dedicated to collecting top-tier luxury items, he actually saw that very cufflink, the end of the Dark Knight, and beneath it, in a small line of text, the listed owner was Kevin. Panic flickered instinctively across Jonathan's face for a few seconds. Then, left with no other choice, he swallowed his pride and turned to Laura for help. Laura strode over angrily and slapped him hard across the face. "You're really something, aren't you? The end of the Dark Knight was something I personally accompanied your brother-in-law to auction for in Italy. How could you dare damage it?" As she said this, Laura deliberately glanced at me as if unintentionally, then leaned closer to my side. What she was trying to imply, I understood perfectly. I shifted sideways, deliberately keeping my distance from her, and asked calmly, "Then this cufflink, are you, as the elder sister, paying for it?" Laura stiffened for a moment, then forced out a few dry laughs. Reluctantly, she pulled out a card, speaking politely to smooth things over. "I'll pay. He broke your property, of course I'll compensate you." When my secretary took the card from her, the crowd immediately erupted in shocked murmurs. "A Centurion black card. I heard there are fewer than 10 people in the entire country who can get one. Chairwoman Mu really is rich. Wait, didn't President Ning also have one?" A few minutes later, the card reader emitted several harsh beeping sounds. "Transaction failed. Please swipe again. Transaction failed. Please swipe again." Laura was stunned. She couldn't believe her ears. In a panic, she shoved my assistant aside, grabbed the card herself, and tried swiping it repeatedly. But no matter how many times she tried, the transaction kept failing. Laura's face flushed bright red. In front of her own employees, she wished she could crawl into a crack in the ground. staggering over to me, her voice barely louder than a mosquito. How could you freeze my card? I let out a cold snort, snatched the card from her hand, held it up, and said loudly, Laura, from today onward, not only this supplementary card, all properties under your name will be reclaimed by the Ning family. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Everyone's gaze toward Laura changed instantly. So Chairwoman Mu's card was just a supplementary one. No wonder I remembered President Ning also had one. Taking the bowl to eat, then smashing it afterward. Turns out Chairwoman Mu was the real one living off a man all along. Listening to the sharp waves of mockery ringing in her ears, Laura's face alternated between red and white. Her eyes were rimmed with red, on the verge of tears. In front of everyone, Jonathan couldn't stand seeing his sister humiliated. Furious, he swung his arm and shouted at me. Ning, you're nothing but a guy with a bit of dirty money. What are you showing off for? I broke the cufflink. Jonathan, will compensate you. Isn't it just 50 million? I can't take out that much cash right now, but the Mu Group has already gone public. I hold a massive amount of stock options and shares, worth tens of billions at market value. Worst case, I'll compensate you with equivalent shares. Jonathan spoke with righteous indignation, as if he were the one who had suffered some grave injustice. I looked at him quietly. Jonathan, I don't want Mu family shares. I don't want stock options either. Jonathan froze for a moment, then grew even angrier. Kevin Ning, don't push your luck. I shook my head helplessly. I don't want them because Mu family assets are simply worthless. The moment the word worthless left my mouth, Jonathan thought I was deliberately humiliating him and nearly lunged at me again. But just then, his secretary came stumbling over, whispering something urgently into Jonathan's ear. In the very next second, Jonathan's eyes flew wide open. A gurgling sound came from his throat, and then he collapsed straight backward. Laura screamed and rushed forward to catch him. From the crowd, someone, whoever it was, saw the breaking news on their phone. Their voice trembled as they spoke. It's over, the Mu family is bankrupt. The Mu Group, it's completely finished. I let out a soft sigh and nodded. Yes, I already told you, it was useless. Because it really was. Worthless. Chapter 8. Now things truly exploded. Not only the Mu family relatives, but all Mu Group employees, including Sam and the others, completely lost it. What? The Mu Group just went public and it's already bankrupt. Are you screwing with us? We worked ourselves to the bone for this company, earning peanuts every month, all for the sake of stocks and options to make some money for our families. And now you're telling us it's all gone. That's right, Chairwoman Mu. You must give us an explanation. The scene grew more and more chaotic. If not for the police holding them back, Laura feared she would have been torn apart alive by the employees. At this moment, Jonathan was finally revived. His eyes were locked tightly onto me, his mouth opening and closing like a dying fish. Faced with this sudden catastrophe, Jonathan was probably hating himself to the core, hating that he had personally called the police earlier. And Laura was completely numb. On one side lay her biological younger brother collapsed on the ground. On the other was her own son cursing her as a vicious woman. Behind her were furious relatives and employees who wanted to rip her apart. She closed her eyes, wishing she could just faint on the spot and be done with it. When she opened them again, Laura broke down crying, utterly devastated and filled with regret. She no longer cared about her image as chairwoman. She kicked off her high heels, crawled on her knees to my feet, and desperately clutched my pant leg. Husband, I was wrong. I shouldn't have harbored such thoughts. I really know I was wrong. Please spare the Mu family. Okay. I frowned and instinctively stepped back. Laura lost her balance and slammed heavily onto the floor. Her chin split open and started bleeding, leaving her in a pitiful state. I didn't even look at her. There was no warmth left in my voice. Laura, I remember you made yourself very clear in front of my parents. You said you would marry Luis, and that everything belonging to the Ning family would have nothing to do with you anymore. You even forced my parents out of the hospital room in front of the entire internet. The things you just did, don't tell me you've already forgotten them. With every sentence I spoke, Laura's expression grew uglier. Every word she had personally said just an hour ago now slapped her back in the face, hard. Laura opened her mouth dryly, as if trying to explain something. But not a single word came out. She could only keep crying. I walked over to the police officers and said solemnly, "You've all seen what's happened. The Mu family attempted to kill me, seize my assets, and afterward tried to destroy my reputation. All of this, I will be filing a lawsuit with the court. When the time comes, I hope you can serve as witnesses. Oh, and about the cufflink, although I don't lack that 50 million. Procedures are procedures. I will pursue compensation from the Mu family in full and will absolutely not accept mediation." The two officers nodded. "Mr. Ning, rest assured, everything that just happened has been fully recorded by our officers. Their behavior was inhumane. Holding them legally accountable is your rightful claim, and the law will support you." After speaking, The police first took Jonathan away for intentional assault. Inside the hall, the bright red banner reading, Mu Group IPO ceremony, was still hanging in the most prominent spot. The irony couldn't have been sharper. Laura collapsed on the ground, her face blank and lifeless. Seeing that the situation had turned irreversibly bad, the Mu family relatives immediately changed their tune and began hurling abuse at Laura. That aunt stormed over in fury, grabbing Laura Mu by the hair. "You useless spendthrift, the Mu family has been destroyed by you. Pay us back. Our stocks were worth hundreds of millions, you owe us all of it." The pain from her scalp jolted Laura awake. She snapped back, raised her hand, and slapped her hard. "Susan, if you parasites hadn't been sucking my blood, the Mu family wouldn't have fallen this fast." As she spoke, Laura completely abandoned all dignity and began brawling with several relatives on the spot. Suddenly, two elderly people burst in from outside. The moment they saw Laura, they recognized her and screamed in shrill voices. "You filthy bitch, you're the one who got our son killed. I'm going to beat you to death." Chapter 9. Even I hadn't expected Luis's parents to show up at the scene. Only after opening my phone did I learn the truth. After the Mu Group went bankrupt, their family business had been heavily affected as well. On top of that, the fact that Luis had been living off the Mu family as a keptman had been dug up by netizens and sent straight to the trending topics, where he was viciously mocked. Laura was pressed to the ground by several people, her forehead already split open and bleeding. Luis's mother kicked her hard. If someone hadn't stopped her in time, Laura would probably have been beaten to death on the spot. Yet no matter how miserable she looked, not a single person felt even the slightest sympathy for her, including her own illegitimate child, who hated her to the core. "Give me back my dad. Give me back my dad. It's all your fault. If it weren't for you, my dad wouldn't have died." I watched all of this coldly, then turned and left. A few months later, the case of Luis's fatal car accident was retried. At last, everyone saw Laura's true colors. My God, that Laura actually conspired with her own family to murder her husband. Thank goodness justice prevailed. If Kevin hadn't survived, he would have died with such a terrible injustice. After returning to the company, I immediately fired all the Mu family relatives and, based on what they had done over the years, legally pursued compensation from them. Over the next half-month, I received one transfer after another from the Mu family as compensation. They were probably truly broke. After wiring a few million, I received a handwritten IOU from Laura inside prison, with compensation amounting to several hundred million. She and Jonathan would likely never be able to repay it in their lifetimes. I put the IOU away, then transferred my parents to a different hospital, settling them into an even better ward. After taking care of all this, I had planned to go abroad to clear my mind, but then I suddenly received a call from the police. According to the officer handling the case, the Mu siblings insisted on seeing me one more time, no matter what. After thinking it over, I decided that before leaving, I would meet Laura once more. When I saw her again, I was slightly startled. In less than a month, Laura looked as if she had aged more than 10 years overnight. Wearing a prison uniform, she had grown dramatically thinner. Her eye sockets were deeply sunken, fine wrinkles covered her face, and she looked nothing like the beauty-obsessed Laura I remembered. The moment she saw me, it was as if she had grasped at a final lifeline. "Kevin. Kevin, I'm begging you. Please take Tom abroad and let him stay away from that family." "Okay." I found it strange. Tom is living perfectly fine with them right now. Even though Luis is dead, he's still their biological grandson. Would his grandparents really treat him badly? Laura's voice faltered. She shook her head, seeming to want to explain something, but in the end, she said nothing. Nearby, Jonathan no longer had the viciousness he once carried in his eyes. He dropped to his knees in front of me and kowtowed heavily several times. "Brother-in-law, I was wrong, but I didn't forgive them. The harm the Mu family had done, to me and to my parents, was real and irreversible, and the compensation, I would pursue it to the very end." A few days after leaving the police station, I finally learned what Laura had been so afraid of. It turned out that Tom wasn't even Luis's biological son. While Laura was keeping Luis as a gigolo, she had also been secretly acting as a mistress to a wealthy businessman. When the Mu family scandal exploded online, that tycoon found out that Laura had been cheating on him with Luis. Enraged, he immediately took his son back and completely blacklisted the Mu family within the industry. I put down my phone. At this point, the Mu family's tangled, sordid gossip did nothing but disgust me. Early the next morning, I boarded the earliest flight to Switzerland, ready to begin a brand new chapter of my life.